Hello there and welcome to my quick start guide on WoW Classic Season of Discovery. So Season of Discovery is classic WoW, but with some extra changes and additions and things to make it feel the same but different from the original vanilla experience in 2004. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about all of the changes that they've made in Season of Discovery and kind of get you started on playing this version of classic World of Warcraft. But before we jump into everything, I do want to give a quick thank you to everybody over on the Patreon. I've just been posting over there, and I really appreciate all the support that everyone's giving me over there. So if you do want to join us on Patreon, I'll leave a link down below. Right, so yes, Season of Discovery. What is Season of Discovery? So Season of Discovery is a new version of Classic WoW which came out in November 2023. This was originally announced a couple weeks before at BlizzCon and came as a massive surprise. Now you may have heard the term Classic Plus being thrown around, which is essentially just Classic with changes, and this is Classic with changes. This is Season of Discovery. However, people don't really class this as Classic Plus as it is the seasonal realm. However, the developers have said that there is going to be a home for your Season of Discovery characters at the end of the season, as this is a realm which has an end, it seems. However, we don't really know when that end is. The server is currently on Phase 7, which is the Naxxramas phase, which is the end of Classic WoW. However, there is rumors of a Phase 8 coming with a brand new raid, which is awfully exciting. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yes, I get asked all the time, is it too late to start Season of Discovery even though we're in Phase 7, technically the last phase? And the answer is no, it's not too late to start Season of Discovery. This is a great time to start. There's all this content to explore and tons of people jumping back into the server for the first time in a long time. And yeah, in this video, we're going to talk about all the aspects and all the changes that you can expect. But essentially, for this video, you need to have a kind of basic knowledge of classic World of Warcraft or even modern World of Warcraft, as there might be some things that I mention here which might not make sense if you've never played WoW before. So let's start off with the basics, getting into the server. So the version of World of Warcraft you want to download for this is Classic Era. Once you've installed Classic Era, log in and select Realm. At the bottom there'll be different tabs, and the one you need for Season of Discovery will be Seasonal. There's various different realm types in Season of Discovery, including PvE, PvP, RP, RP PvP, and really this choice is up to you. If you want to have PvP on at all times as you run around the world, pick a PvP server. If you don't want that and you just want to choose when you want to do PvP, pick a PvE server. Personally, for me, PvE server is just so much better than a PvP server. It's just nice to have that freedom to run around and not have to worry about someone just running up and killing you randomly. But it is completely up to you and there is no right decision here. But once you've picked your realm, you create your character, log in, and then you start leveling. Now, the actual leveling process in Season of Discovery is essentially the same as Classic WoW. You still have to go to your trainers, you still have to buy your mount at level 40 and level 60, flight paths are not account-wide. It does have all of those inconveniences that were the same back in Classic WoW. Now, Season of Discovery does have an increased level rate at 150% from Classic World of Warcraft, so it is relatively fast to level up. On top of that, you do have a 300% gold boost as well while leveling, and that's just to kind of level out your gold income because you're leveling so fast. If you do want to increase that even more, you can add an extra 3% from a new item called the Cozy Sleeping Bag. This is a Season of Discovery exclusive quest which has you going all around the world trying to obtain this Cozy Sleeping Bag item. This quest can be started at level 14, and if you are looking for a guide, there are plenty on Wowhead and other such fan sites. But yeah, certainly worth getting, and a little bit of an adventure around the world to get an extra 3% on your leveling. Now, as mentioned, there are multiple ways to level in Season of Discovery and Classic WoW, obviously. You can obviously do your traditional questing through the old world, very much identical to how it is right now in Classic World of Warcraft. You can obviously sprinkle in some dungeons with that as well, or you can just do dungeons exclusively. There is a pre-made group finder available, so similar to the one that we have for Mythic Plus in retail. That is available in Season of Discovery. It won't teleport you. It is just a case of kind of listing yourself for groups and people reaching out to see if you want to do that with them. But yeah, very much a handy tool to have, but it isn't that popular. People have been using it a little bit more since it's come in, but people will still spam the looking for group channel and things like that. So make sure you're joining those chat channels when you make your new character. Now, Season of Discovery does also have level up raids. So originally when the server came out, it was capped at certain levels. It was capped at 25, 40, 50, and then eventually 60. Each of those level caps had their own custom raids, but after the fact, fact, those raids are still around and they can be used to level up. So at level 25, you'll unlock the Black Fathom Deeps. This is a 10-player raid located in the Black Fathom Deeps in Ashenvale. This is a 7-boss raid with a 3-day lockout and tons of custom items that are going to make you extremely powerful for your leveling. Once you get to level 40, you can do the Gnomrigan raid. This is again a 10-player raid and is in Dunmoreau. This has 6 bosses and also has a 3-day lockout. And the final level up raid is Sunken Temple. This is a level 50 20-player raid located at the Temple of Atul Hakar in the Swamp of Sorrows. This does have 8 bosses and it does also have a weekly lockout, but again, massive amounts of new custom loot inside there that's going to help you a ton while leveling, and you get so much XP from these level up raids as well, so they're definitely worth doing if you do see a group pop up on the group finder. Another way to level in Season of Discovery is Incursions. This is a new exclusive feature created for this server that grants incredible amounts of XP. Now these have changed quite a bit since their original implementation, but essentially at the Dragons and Nightmare portals, there's going to be a questing zone which have daily quests, so you want to go there every day and do the dailies for massive amounts of XP. You can start these at level 25 in Duskwood. Once you hit level 40, you can head over to Ashenvale, and then at 50, you can go to the Hinterlands or you can go to Feralus, and as mentioned, this is at the Dragons and Nightmare portals. So you can just head over there, do your daily quests, get a massive amount of XP, and then head back to dungeons or questing or whatever you like to do. Another Season of Discovery feature is Blackrock Eruptions. These occur in the Searing Gorge and Burning Steppes and happen every 2 hours from midnight, and they last an hour. This is again just a daily quest area, but they are elite quests, so you might need to get a group for this, unless you're a class that can really take them out. When this event is active, it will say at the top of the screen, and all of the quests will become active at Thorium Point in Searing Gorge. And finally, on leveling, there will also be some new items that you're going to be picking up while leveling, and these are waylaid supplies, so if you're a new player, this might be a bit confusing. You just get these random green boxes popping up all the time. So these drop randomly in the world and in dungeons and things like that, and you'll notice that these boxes require items to fill them. Now what you need to do here is obviously look at what item is required, head to the auction house and purchase it and fill the box. Once the box is full, you can hand that into an NPC in the capital city, and this will give you rep for a new Season of Discovery rep called the Azeroth Commerce Authority for the Alliance, or the Durotar Supply and Logistics for the Horde. Now the main reason while doing this while leveling is just going to be the incredible amount of XP you get from it from basically nothing, so definitely worth doing. Obviously don't spend all your gold on this, but if it is relatively cheap, it's definitely worth filling these boxes. The Reputation also has various rewards, including various sizes of bag, a bind on account neck, helm, rings, and various toys. So yeah, if you do want to get that to Exalted, there is various rewards in there to help you level and help your future alts level. Moving on now, let's talk about classes and runes. Runes are a new system in Season of Discovery, and these are originally obtained through secrets around the world, but as of recently, you can purchase all of these from a vendor in the starting area or the capital city. Now, if you do want to run around and still obtain all of your runes the old school way by killing random NPCs or doing secret quests and things like that, that is still a way that you can obtain these, but if you do want to skip that feature entirely, you can just purchase them from level 1. Now, runes can be active or passive abilities, which are enchanted onto your gear to gain new and returning abilities from future expansions. So when you open your character sheet, you'll see all of these runes on the side of it. You can simply just click those and then click the item, and once that cast is done, that'll give you the ability in your spellbook, be it active or passive, and it really does help with your leveling, and it really does help at max level, and it really changes the way that some classes play, which is kind of interesting, including creating brand new class specializations for ones that haven't existed before. They've actually gone ahead and created new tanks and healers out of this. So for tanks, you're now going to have the option to be a rogue tank, a shaman tank, and a warlock tank. And for healers, you'll now have the option to be a mage healer using time magic, which is pretty interesting. Now, I've done a lot of max level dungeons and raids, and I have seen these tanks and healers pop up in those dungeons and raids, so it is quite viable. And if you're looking for something new and interesting, I definitely recommend trying out some of those new specializations. On top of runes, there are also skill books, which will just straight up give you a new ability. These can also be purchased on the rune vendor or in specific vendors in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Once you learn these, this is just going to give you the ability, and a lot of these are actually spells from future expansions. For example, Aspect of the Viper for hunters, or Divine Steed for paladins, which is awesome. You're also going to get extra utilities from this as well. For example, warlocks will now be able to create a summoning portal, which can also also be used by people outside of the party, which is pretty good. So yeah, meeting stones are not a thing in Season of Discovery. So if there is a warlock kind of floating around the outside of a dungeon or raid, make sure you're using their warlock summoning portal, which is very handy to have. But overall, the rune system is very interesting, and obviously having it on a vendor does skip a lot of the busy work for players if you are just wanting to jump in and kind of level regularly with these new abilities. I do like the fact that there is still an option to find these runes out in the world, because you will just stumble upon them randomly while leveling, which is actually really cool, and I always really enjoyed that about Season of Discovery. Okay, so let's move on to gearing. So gearing is fairly similar to how it worked in Classic WoW and how it kind of works in Modern WoW, to be honest. But exclusive to Season of Discovery, there is a new way to gear up your max level characters relatively fast. So when you're doing max level dungeons and raids, you'll notice that the bosses are now dropping a new currency called the Tarnished Undermine Real. Now, if you're a retail WoW player, this system is extremely similar to the Bullion or Dina system from Season 4 of Shadowlands and Dragonflight. So all the max level dungeon and raid bosses will be dropping this currency, and this currency is used to buy a ton of items. The vendor is located in Booty Bay by the auction house, and this vendor does sell dungeon sets, the entirety of Tier 1, some of Tier 2, as well as trinkets, rings, and materials, and other fun items like toys. This is definitely the best way to catch up fast on a fresh level 60 or a returning level 60, as you could just purchase the entirety of Tier 1 or parts of Tier 2 straight away, as long as you have the right amount of reals. Just a note on the Tier 1 and 2 stuff, they are tokens, so you will need to go inside Molten Core or Blackwing Lair to purchase the specific items. You'll just purchase the token from the real vendor, and then you'll go into the raid, and right at the start of the raid, you could just purchase the tier sets from the vendors there. You don't even need a raid, I believe. You can just go straight in as a solo player, which is nice. Speaking of dungeons and raids, the loot inside these dungeons and raids has been adjusted, and additional loot has been added for the class specializations. So your warlock tanks and your rogue tanks and your mage healers, there's going to be brand new items and tier sets related to these specializations, which is very fun. And also general items from the raids and dungeons have been updated just to have better stats and make them more viable in general, which is kind of nice. So yeah, keep an eye out for different changes like that. But they've also gone ahead and added awesome things like new class weapons. So there's ones in Molten Core and there's ones in Blackwing Lair, which have entire quest lines related to them. So that is awesome. I absolutely love that. I recently got my Hunter class weapon from Blackwing Lair, and I went on an epic brand new quest around the world to obtain it, which was very, very fun. Other changes include minor things like AQ20 gear no longer requires reputation with the Cenarian Circle. However, AQ40 tier sets do still require Brood of Nosdormu. They've also added new mounts to AQ20 and AQ40 that can be used outside of the raid, so you'll probably see a lot of AQ mounts running about, and that's the reason why. And pretty much all of the raids have hard modes and different difficulties, which don't reward any higher level gear, but they do reward more gear, and sometimes even have extra bosses. There's actually an extra boss at the end of Molten Core if you complete it on the hardest difficulty, which is absolutely insane. I haven't actually done that, but it does sound pretty interesting, and it sounds like Nax is also going to have something similar, which is very exciting. But as of the recording this, I don't think anyone's done Nax hard mode. Moving on, let's talk about dungeons and raids. So in my experience on my server, there's always groups for dungeons, be it level up or max level. Now, one type of run that you're going to see very prominently is coin runs, and when they say coin runs, they mean reals. So a lot of these dungeons obviously do drop this currency, and people are just going to run these dungeons to try and get as many coins as they can so they can buy the items from the vendor. That's kind of a good thing of this system, because it does reinvigorate all of these max level dungeons to make them relevant even if you have outgeared them, and I really like that quite a bit. Now, one of the coolest things in Season of Discovery is the fact that there are two brand new dungeons. Now, the first one is Demon Fall Canyon. Now, I do have a full video talking about this dungeon if you do want to check it out, but basically this is a brand new 5-man 6-boss dungeon located in the southern part of Ashenvale in Demon Fall Canyon. It does have a small achievement which requires level 55 to unlock the quest, and this starts in southern Fellwood. This dungeon has brand new items, including a classic version of Gorehowl, which is awesome, but yeah, not too difficult. This one is very much an entry-level new dungeon, so you can just jump into that on a fresh 60. The achievement is just literally one quest, so it's very easy to do. The other new dungeon is the Karazhan Crypt. Crypts. Now, this was recently added in Phase 7. This is a very difficult dungeon and definitely requires quite a lot of gear and knowledge of your class to complete. There is an attunement quest line, which does take a little bit of time. I do have a full video on the attunement if you do want to check that out, but of course you can check out Wowhead guides and things like that. This is started on a wanted poster outside Light's Hope Chapel. The gear that drops in here is equivalent to Blackwing Lair, and this is a 5-man dungeon, by the way. This dungeon uses a new darkness mechanic, which has not been seen in Classic before, which essentially has your group kind of gathering around someone holding the torch, which is kind of awesome. And this also has a daily lockout, so you can do this daily. Obviously, if you do mess it up and your group folds, that's going to lock you out for the day. But this is very, very cool. I've done it a couple of times now. I really enjoy it. The bosses aren't super complicated. They do kind of have that classic vibes to them, but certainly a very, very good dungeon. And once you get up enough, I highly recommend you give it a go. But for raids, there are still plenty of groups for Molten Core, Onyxia, Blackwing Lair, and AQ, and more. Attunements do still exist in Season of Discovery, including the Onyxia attunement, but the Onyxia attunement is account wide. So once you've done it on one character, you'll have that unlocked across your account, which is awesome. Now, all of these raids are tuned for lower numbers. However, you can take up to 40 if you want to. It's just simply the tuning will be tuned around lower numbers. So for example, AQ20 and Zul'Gurub are tuned for 10 players, but can take up to 20. AQ40, Molten Core, Onyxia's Lair, Blackwing Lair, and Naxxramas are all tuned for 20 players, but can take a total of 40 if you want to. Now, these don't scale. They will literally just be tuned for 20 players. You're just bringing in more people to take it down, and it will drop the exact same amount of loot regardless of how many players you take. Normally, pugs will take a few more than what it's tuned to just so they can get through the bosses. You'll very rarely see a raid take 40 people, which is interesting, which also makes it extremely accessible for a lot of groups. Finally, on Dungeons & Raids, world bosses are actually in their own instances instead of out in the world. So basically, near the areas where the world bosses will be, you'll see an instance portal, and you can just simply go into that. People are always doing groups for these. These also have lockouts as well and will drop different loot, which has been added in Season of Discovery. But yeah, you still have the same experience of fighting this boss. It would just be in its own little raid instead of outside in the world where you're competing for tags and things like that. Now, I did want to do a quick section in this video just going over the terminology in the Looking for Group channel, because it can be a little overwhelming at times. So as said, make sure you're joining that chat channel, and you'll see various different abbreviations which might not make any sense. So the first one you're probably going to see quite a lot is SR. This means soft reserve. So essentially what that means is you can reserve an item in a raid. So say you're going to Molten Core, you want to reserve the Hunter Leaf, you can use an add-on to do so. We'll talk about add-ons in a bit. But essentially, yeah, a lot of these groups will have 2 to 3 soft reserves. And if that item drops, if you're the only one reserving it, you'll get it. But if you have multiple people soft reserving it, you will be competing against them with /roll. HR is hard reserve. So this normally happens with a group leader. So say, for example, in AQ, the leader will normally hard reserve the mount drop at the end of the run. Various items do get hard reserved in raids, and obviously you want to make sure you're joining groups that don't have the item that you want as a hard reserve. I did touch upon it earlier, coin run. This is again just doing all of the bosses in a raid or a dungeon for the most amount of reals. You'll see this in LBRS and UBRS. Strat and Scholarments are going to be kind of your regular coin runs that you're going to see quite a bit. HM is hard mode, so you're going to see raids like ZG and AQ have their hard modes. These are activated by various things, and you're going to see a lot of people just doing the hard mode most of the time because it's not as hard as some things. So yeah, some raids are easier than others, but most of the time it will be hard mode. But for the most part, just join it regularly. You don't need to learn too much about that. Speaking of hard modes, you'll also see for MC, there's going to be like Heat 1 to 3. Heat 1 to 3 is essentially just difficulty level. As mentioned, it's not going to drop any new loot, but it is going to drop more loot. Most of the time, the pugs are just going to do Heat 1. Heat 3 doesn't happen that often, but there might be groups doing it, so keep an eye out for that. Staying on raid difficulties, you also have one called Trials for Blackwing Lair. This is an option that the raid leader picks at the start of the raid to essentially just add more different affixes to it, essentially. The more affixes you have, the more loot that will drop. Most pugs won't do too many of these. Some of them are easier than others, but yeah, for the most part, just don't worry too much about it. Again, it's going to be something that the leader will deal with. Another one you're going to see quite a lot is Strat Full. So this is essentially just a full run of Strathome. So that's the living and undead side. You'll always start on the undead service entrance, which is the back gate entrance in Eastern Plagueland. lands, and you're just basically going to do a full run of the dungeon. Alongside that, you'll normally see the words orbs RR. This essentially means the righteous orbs that drop will be round robin. So when a righteous orbs drops, everybody needs it. If you win that orb, you want to pass on any future orbs until everyone has got one. So everyone gets a chance at getting a righteous orb, as they sell for quite a bit of gold on the auction house. But in general, you are going to see a lot of abbreviations for dungeon names. So you're going to see like BRD, UBRS, LBRS, KC. Like all the dungeons basically have their own little abbreviations, and you just kind of work it out from looking at it. Like UBRS is Upper Blackrock Spire, and there's going to be various ones like that. But if you play the game enough, in Modern WoW even, you probably know most of those already. And finally, I do want to talk about add-ons, because I don't feel like this gets spoken about enough. Now, you've probably noticed from my footage that my UI does look very similar to the retail UI. So this is because I use an add-on called Dragonflight UI. This is an incredible add-on which gets constant updates, and this brings the modern UI to classic with an edit mode, which is absolutely insane. So shout out to the developer of this add-on. I use it all the time, and I just absolutely love it. So if you are a retail player coming into classic and you don't want to use the classic UI, I highly recommend that. For brand new players for classic, you might notice that you do not have any marks on your map regarding quests. It doesn't tell you where to go or what to do. An add-on to help you with this is going to be Questy. Questy is an incredible add-on which has pretty much every quest in Classic WoW cataloged, and when you pick up that quest, it's just going to give you the locations on the map where to go and what to do, similar to retail WoW. For your runes and Season of Discovery, I recommend the add-on Rune Reminder. This is a great add-on I use all the time for creating loadouts of my runes. So obviously, you know, if I'm running a dual spec, I'll have different runes for those specs, and you can create loadouts so you can swap and change on the fly, which is super handy to have. For loot and raids, there are generally two add-ons that people use. You're going to need an add-on called Gargle and an add-on called Loot Reserve. This kind of links into the soft reserve thing I mentioned earlier. Either of these will be used to reserve loot in these runs, so make sure you've got these add-ons. They're very, very good, so when the leader says to loot reserve, normally the add-on will pop up and give you a list of items that you can just simply click and reserve. Sometimes there is a website that people use as well, which essentially does the same thing, so just make sure you're reading the raid chat when people are talking about reserving loot. Another add-on I really recommend is Atlas Loot and the Season of Discovery Atlas Loot. This will add all of the loot drops from Season of Discovery, from all the dungeons and raids and things like that, into an add-on that you can just kind of browse through, which helps out a ton if you are looking to kind of pinpoint different drops and things like that and see what the changes are in Season of Discovery. Another one as well is Leatrix Plus and Maps. Both of these add-ons will add a ton of quality of life additions. There are retail versions, so you may already be familiar with it, but certainly I highly recommend these add-ons just to add some extra quality of life additions to Classic WoW. And of course, as well, DBM, Bigwigs, all the kind of dungeon stuff like that, and various retail add-ons like LVUI, Details, Weak Auras, Plater. Basically, because Classic WoW is built off of retail, a lot of the add-ons do work. They will have Classic WoW versions, but a lot of them do work very, very similar to how they work in retail. So if you just want to have a Classic WoW experience and go no add-ons, you can do that. But if you do want to load up with a lot of quality of life additions, there are tons of add-ons to help you out with that, to make the experience more accessible for yourself if you are coming over. And that's it. That's kind of everything I would say for Season of Discovery. Hopefully I explained it okay. There are a little bit of nuance here, but I think like once you're leveling and kind of at max level and you'll kind of understand how the server works, it is so much fun. I jumped in again a couple phases ago just to kind of experience it. I've done Classic WoW so many times, and this is just such a great experience because it is Classic WoW, but it's also got changes that make it just a better experience for your average player like me. You know, generally speaking, I do play a lot of retail WoW, but this is just such a fun experience, and I've been really enjoying my time there. And I just wanted to kind of share my experiences with you guys and tell you exactly how this server works, because it can be very overwhelming at times. So yeah, Season of Discovery, in my opinion, is the best version of Classic WoW right now, and it is a wonderful time to join. There are tons of people leveling ults or even starting out for the first time. I think it's still going to be around for a while. We do have a rumored new phase coming out with a brand new Scarlet Crusade raid, which is awesome. So who knows what the future of Season of Discovery looks like. They did say it's not going away, so you will not lose your characters, which is lovely. And maybe this is just the start of something beautiful in regards to Classic Plus. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down below if you play Season of Discovery and you have any tips or tricks to help out other players that I might have missed in this video. And let me know your general thoughts on the idea of having a Classic Plus in the future. I very much hope that's something that we do get. So if you do like this video, do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to support me outside of YouTube, I'm also on Patreon and I'm on Twitter at MrGMYT. community. And I also have a partner Discord channel, and I've been streaming on twitch.tv/MrGM. Been streaming quite a bit of Season of Discovery, but also a bit of retail on the War Within. So if you do want to check me out on stream, guys, I'm over on twitch.tv/MrGM. And with that, guys, I'll see you next time.